Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Lindsey Elmore and I'm so excited to be here with you virtually today. I wish I was there in person to hug all of you old friends and meet all of you new friends. Today I have several classes for you. We're going to start out by talking about mindfulness and how the brain works, how the sense of smell works, and how we can use essential oils to transform our emotions into a more mindful state. But throughout my presentations, I hope that I convey to you that there is more to it than that. It takes an integration of the mind, body, and spirit. I'll also be sharing with you some gentle, easy yoga moves that anyone can do in their everyday life. You can combine them with essential oils, and I'll also be sharing with you some of my favorite essential oil enhancing tools that you can use in your daily mindfulness routine. In this video, we are going to talk all about how essential oils can empower and enhance your mindfulness practices. Before we get into the how-to of how all of this works, let's take a big step back and let's first talk about what is an emotion. If you get down to the definition of an emotion is a relatively brief, conscious experience that is characterized by intense mental activity where we usually have a high degree of pleasure or displeasure. There's not great agreement among scientists on exactly what emotions are. We know that emotions are intertwined with our mood and our temperament and our disposition and our personality, as well as our motivation to take actions. But all of these in and of themselves are not emotions. If we think about theories about emotions, we also have to ask, where does the conscious experience of emotions come from? Because it's one thing to feel anger or to feel joy or to feel shock or surprise. It's another thing to actually have the conscious experience of those emotions. And so where those two things intertwine is not really well known. And that's because emotions are really complex. In some theories of emotions, there are states of feeling that impact both our physical and psychological health. This is important because I think too often we think of emotions as just like, oh, it's all in your head. But negative emotions have a profound impact on our stress body and can lead to us having high heart rate, changes in our pupillary constriction and dilation. It can change our digestive processes. It changes the level of cortisol in our body. So emotions are not just a like, oh, I thought about that emotion and that was it and it was gone. We end up having actual physiological manifestations of our emotions. Emotions also involve different components. There's the subjective experience of having like, I am angry, whereas other people who go through the same exact set of events may not end up angry. So there's a subjective experience that comes in with emotions. There's also the cognitive process by which we say, okay, I am identifying in my conscious brain that I am angry. There is then the expressive behavior. So some people, when they're angry, what happens? They sit and they stew and they just sit in that anger. Other people explode and have massive problems with attacking other people or screaming or yelling to deal with their anger. Other people experience anger And this is, I think, what we're all aiming for, is we experience these highs and lows of emotions and we just allow it to flow. We just allow it to be. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm angry that happened. I learned something a few months ago and it stuck with me very well. And that was a saying by Eckhart Tolle. And Tolle said, stress is nothing more than wanting the current moment to be something that it is not. Now, I think we as a collective humanity have been through a lot of moments that we want to be something that they are not. But when we can see that that is just a subjective experience of an emotion, I'm going to cognitively process that, okay, I'm feeling this emotion. We don't have to allow the anger or the frustration or the disbelief to govern our expressive behaviors. As I mentioned, there is also the physiological changes that can happen with the body. Within the practice of yoga, which is ultimately a practice of mindfulness, one of the biggest tenets, I know so many people think yoga is about movement. Yoga is not about movement. Yoga is about the mindful control of the breath in and out, and using that breath as a way to unite and create union within ourselves, within our communities, and within the greater world around us. So these physiological changes don't have to lead you to hyperventilate when you're feeling stressed out. You can craft a mindfulness process that helps you to control your emotional response no matter what is in front of you. There is also the ability to look at emotions through different lenses. And let's talk about those two lenses that are located within the brain. Within your brain, there are two distinct systems that coexist. One is the cortex. The cortex is really your thinking. It's your more highly evolved portion of your brain. Within the cortex, we have the frontal lobe, which is associated with reason and planning and parts of speech, as well as the coordination of movements. It is where we cognitively process our emotions. Then we have the occipital lobe down at the base of the skull, where we process our visual information. We have the temporal lobes located next to the temples, which is where we hear and interpret auditory stimuli, as well as have many of our speech patterns entrained. And then there is the parietal lobe, which helps us to orient to where we are, recognize where we are and other people around us, and it is a major processing center for all kinds of stimuli. On the other hand, there is the limbic system. And the limbic system is considered the emotional brain. Within the limbic system, we have emotions, behavior, motivation, long-term memory, olfaction. The different structures within the brain within the limbic system include the hippocampus. This is where we form short and long-term memories. This is also where we have cognitive maps, so that if you have driven 1,000 times from your house to your parents' house, you know how to get there even without thinking about it fully. You don't have to dedicate your frontal lobe because your hippocampus knows that map and how to get there. There's also the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is like the opposite of the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe, remember, that's in that cortex of your brain, that more highly evolved part of the brain. In the cortex, what we have is rationale and problem solving and the ability to interpret spreadsheets, etc. The amygdala is like, I am scared of this, I want to mate with this, ooh, I'm kind of into this like social setting, or I'm out. That's it. That's all the amygdala knows how to do. Fight, flight, mate, and understand different social functions that go into being a part of an animal community. The hypothalamus, super important for reproduction, sleep patterns, and body homeostasis. So if you are attracted to someone and you just don't know why, chances are it's because your hippocampus is firing. Your hypothalamus is firing. And the hypothalamus is also the beginning of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is so important when it comes to the management of stress. We also have the thalamus that sends information to the cortex. There are also mammillary bodies, which is where we recognize faces, even if we can't put a name to it. And the septal nuclei is also an ancient portion of the brain that governs our pleasure, both pleasure of sexual experiences as well as food and being around loved ones and beautiful sunsets. It just lets us know that, oh, I like this for some reason, even if we can't explain it. So to make things more simple, if you think about it this way, what is the difference between your cortex and your limbic system? If you try to explain why did you marry the person that you married, or why are you in a long-term partnership with the person that you're in a partnership with, you can explain with words, well, they've got a good job, they're supportive, they help clean up around the house, they do these great things that I love. But there are a lot of people who also do those exact same things and could check those same boxes. The reason that you are in a committed relationship, either with a spouse, a partner, even friends, is because they nourish you on the level of the limbic system. The cool thing about the limbic system is that the only way that the limbic system communicates is through the sense of smell. It is the only way to communicate with the limbic system. Whereas in your cortex, you can communicate via visual stimuli, auditory stimuli, tactile stimuli, even taste stimuli get encoded at some level in the cortex. But the only way to directly send information to the limbic system, which then will make it to your cortex, is via the sense of smell. So if you think about the sense of smell as well as all of our senses, and if we really think about what does the brain and the nervous system do for us, the brain and the nervous system only have 3 functions. That's it. I know that we think that there is so much else that goes into it, but if you break it down, everything goes into these 3 functions. There is sensation. We sense something by hearing it. We sense something by tasting it or by touching it. Our body also sends sense signals from within us to our brain. For example, if you are eating an unhealthy diet that you know is making your gut inflamed, there are going to be inflammatory signals sent up via the vagus nerve into your brain. The brain then senses those inflammatory cytokines and then says, oh, we've got to mount a response to this. We've got to do something about this. So sensation, both external and internal, is the first function of the brain. The next thing is a response. So a response is like, oh, I feel this table. Ooh, it's sticky. I need to clean it. Or, ooh, it's nice and smooth. I like this table. On an internal level, let's say that you are overproducing thyroid hormone and your body sends a signal back to your brain, back to the hypothalamus, and says, I got enough. I'm okay. I don't need any more thyroid hormone. The response then is that the body will shut down systems that ultimately lead to the production of thyroid hormone. The third thing that the body does and that the brain does that is a key key function of the brain is integration. So stimuli, as far as sensory structures, and are communicated to the nervous system where information is processed, and this processing is called integration. This means that if you have seen a beautiful sunset before, you can recall that, you can remember that, you integrate it. You also can tie your sensory experiences to certain practices. That is what is so key about using essential oils for mindfulness, is that you can say, all right, I know that when I smell a little bit of lavender, I am going to take a moment and pause and relax. That type of sensory integration is the third part of how we use our brain. So let's talk about the sense of smell for a moment. The sense of smell is really cool because it is one of our oldest senses and yet one of the least well known. It also is one of the most pervasive senses and goes through basically our entire genetic code. It goes through and really makes an impact on how we perceive the world around us, even if we don't typically think of our sense of smell as being very important. Your sense of smell is critically important to your survival, which is why it is one of the oldest senses, because when things are maintained evolutionarily, it means that it is very important. It means that you need it on a basic level to survive, and that the system is functioning just fine and doesn't need any further development. So I said that the sense of smell was very widely distributed. So 950 odorant receptor genes are in the human genome. Odorant receptor genes are present on every single chromosome except for 20, 22, and Y. The sense of smell is the largest known gene family, comprising between 3 to 5% of all of your genetic code. So there are certain neurons that really are sensitive to one smell, certain neurons that are sensitive to other smells. But the big thing is to remember that the sense of smell pervades your entire body. And really, we don't just smell with our nose, we smell with our entire body. When we smell with our nose, so I open up an essential oil, what happens? Well, there are odorant molecules that become lifted into the air. And when those odorant molecules travel into my nose, they hit tiny hair called cilia. The cilia begin to vibrate. Those vibrations send an electrical signal up to the brain, and it coalesces. All of those signals begin to come together on the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb kind of braids that information together, brings all that information together, and sends projections, sends axons into your limbic system, where the beginning of the processing may occur. From there, the sensory information gets sent from the limbic system via the thalamus to the cortex, where we begin to have that conscious perception of, oh, I like the way this smells, or oh, I don't like the way that smells. That is how the sense of smell works. Now, let's shift gears a little bit, because I don't think that everyone takes into account how critical mindfulness practices are for your overall health. But let's talk about the role of chronic stress in our body. Chronic stress is experienced when there is a mismatch between the perceived demand of the world around us and one's ability to manage those demands. It is an emotional and a mental response to an outside situation. When we are continually stressed, whether that stress is real or if it is perceived, the nervous system shifts from a parasympathetic system, a relaxing and calming system, into sympathetic overdrive. And sympathetic overdrive is really not good for us because when we perceive these continuous stressors, what happens is there is an increase in cortisol. Cortisol not only perpetuates itself through a process called cortisol steal, where if you have a little bit of cortisol and you keep having a little bit of stress and a little bit more stress and a little bit more stress, the cortisol builds on itself and becomes more and more and more and more. When cortisol gets to these toxic levels, you can experience immunosuppression, increased risk for colds, flus, viruses, as well as ongoing inflammation, which, in my opinion, ongoing inflammation may be the root cause of all disease, period. All of it, be it diabetes, be it hypertension, be it depression, be it anxiety, there is inflammation somewhere in the system. Cortisol also accelerates aging by breaking down key tissues and showing the worry on our face. You know how people say that you can see when people are aging? That is a byproduct of cortisol. There is also increased risk for mood disorders such as anxiety and anhedonia, which is just that not wanting to get out of bed feeling. And there is also abnormal metabolism. Now, I know that many of you over in Europe and Africa and the Middle East and Russia are much more metabolically healthy than most Americans. But in America, there are 88% of people that are metabolically unhealthy. And the problem with metabolic disease is that it increases the risk of negative outcomes of every single other disease. So if you are someone who's maybe facing pre-diabetes or diabetes or high cholesterol, or maybe you've got a little bit of a belly around you, recognize that controlling your stress response also helps to heal all of those metabolic problems that you have been facing. So let's talk now about how we can use essential oils to shift our mindset. Because when we think about emotions, there are always activated emotions where we're woohoo, we're up, we're feeling it. There are also deactivated emotions where we're kind of more quiet, where we're more somber, where we're, more inward. So if you put that on your y-axis, where we have activation versus deactivation, there's also a spectrum on the x-axis, which is negative to positive. So I can have very activated emotions that are negative. So I can be very nervous. I can be like, oh my gosh, I'm on camera and I don't know about this. And what if people don't like this presentation? And what if somebody's not even paying attention right now? That's a negative connotation of an activated emotions. Versus I can just say, you know what? I'm excited to be here. I am alert. I am focused on teaching my audience something right now because I know that if we can use these essential oils, we can transform emotions from the negative to the positive. That is an example of a positive interpretation of an activated emotion. The same thing can happen with deactivated emotions. I'm so sad, so depressed, I'm so tired all the time. Girl, grab your essential oil and just go, I'm pretty calm. I'm very relaxed. I'm very serene. Let's talk now about combining essential oils in a way that can transform emotions. So one of the essential oil blends that I love, that I think many members have gotten great benefit from, is the combination of Stress Away, frankincense, and lavender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open these up and I am going to add equal parts of each. Now you can add as much as you want or as little as you want. I've got mine in a dropper bottle because I actually use these essential oils so much in combination because they are such a powerful way to transform emotions. You can also, if you want to save a little bit of money, you can dilute them in a carrier oil. However, you don't have to, and I honestly think that they are nicer without the carrier oil, where you're just combining the Stress Away, lavender, and frankincense. So I'm just going to give that some time to run. This was a blend that was taught to me by Dr. Benjamin Purkis, and it is the basis of the Aroma Freedom technique, which is an essential oil application technique that also helps you to transform negative emotions. So basically, to do the Aroma Freedom technique, you are going to set a goal for yourself, and you want that goal to be a goal that you are so excited about, but yet you just don't know how it is going to work. And when you set that goal for yourself, you are going to listen for the negative voice inside of you that tells you that it's not possible. So my Stress Away bottle was almost out of oil. So I'm going to show you a trick. If you are down to the end of your bottle, take your lid off, and then you're just going to rock, and the orifice reducer will come right out. And that way you're able to get those final few drops of the essential oil. Now, once you have combined all of your oils, you want to really let them mellow for a moment. So set your goal, say it out loud to yourself, listen for the negative voice that tells you that it's not possible. Then you're going to think to yourself, how does that voice make me feel? And then you're going to take your blend, which I know, purists, I have not let this meld together that well, but then you're going to take just one drop of your oil into your hands, rub your hands together, take some deep breaths in and some deep breaths out, breathing into those negative emotions so that you can ultimately come out on the other side with new belief patterns and new systems of understanding. Because when we transform our emotions, there's only basically 3 or 4 things that can transform emotions: sense, the words that we speak to ourselves, and meditation. So using your Stress Away essential oil, you're going to get those really prominent aromas of vanilla and cedar wood. The lavender is just such a calming and relaxing, herbaceous floral scent that I think really jogs a lot of memories and takes people back. There's also frankincense, which has that woodsy, resinous aroma that also has a very spiritual connotation to it as well. When you put all 3 of these together, you get a great blend because you've got the sweetness from the Stress Away, you've got the woodsiness from the frankincense, and the herbaceousness from the lavender that all come together to create an aromatic experience that can transform your emotions. Now, once you've kind of dived deep into all those negative emotions, be it the frustration, the anger, the whatever it is, you can then use essential oils like Transformation, which is one of my favorite essential oils. It has a very pronounced peppermint aroma. It also contains lemon and Royal Hawaiian sandalwood and clary sage and some frankincense as well. These essential oils can be part of the process that helps you to say, I am in this negative state of mind, and now I am going to shift and be in a more positive state of mind using conscious breath, conscious essential oils, conscious language, and as we'll talk about in one of my upcoming classes, conscious movement as well.